This is gonna blow your mind. Welcome to Global Facts. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a moment that stunned the nation and reverberated through every corner of the legal world, the United States Supreme Court delivered a unanimous 9-0 verdict. The decision was not just a legal ruling, it was a seismic event that captured the attention of millions, from lawmakers in Washington to ordinary citizens watching at home. This was a case that would ultimately redefine the boundaries of American justice, setting a new precedent for how the highest court in the land interprets the Constitution and the powers of government. At the heart of the case was Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an individual whose personal struggle became a symbol for a much larger debate. But the impact of the court's decision rippled far beyond one man, touching the lives of countless Americans and raising questions that would echo for years to come. The ruling directly challenged the limits of executive power and tested the very sanctity of constitutional rights, forcing the nation to reconsider the delicate balance between government authority and individual liberty. As news of the verdict spread, Americans everywhere were compelled to confront a difficult and uncomfortable question, one that struck at the core of the nation's values. What happens when the government, after years of legal battles, finally admits a mistake, but the damage done to an individual's life is irreversible? Can justice ever truly be restored, or are some wrongs simply too great to be undone? In a rare display of unity, the ruling brought together justices from across the ideological spectrum. Liberals and conservatives alike recognized the gravity of the legal principles at stake, setting aside their differences to speak with one voice. Their unanimous decision underscored just how fundamental these issues are to the American legal system, and how deeply they affect the lives of ordinary people. Garcia's case quickly became a litmus test for the American system of checks and balances, highlighting the ongoing struggle between the branches of government and the importance of judicial oversight. The case pitted the authority of the judiciary against the sweeping powers of the executive branch, especially in matters of immigration and foreign affairs, areas where the stakes are often highest and the consequences most profound. The outcome of this landmark decision will shape how the Second and Fourth Amendments are interpreted for generations to come, influencing debates over gun rights, privacy, and the limits of government surveillance. Above all, the case serves as a powerful reminder that the rights at stake in our courts are not abstract principles. They belong to each and every one of us, forming the foundation of our shared democracy. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a 29-year-old sheet metal worker from Maryland, built a life in the U.S. after fleeing violence in El Salvador. He was a dedicated father and husband, with no criminal record, and was granted protection by an immigration judge who recognized the danger he faced if deported. Despite this, federal authorities accused him, without evidence, of gang affiliation, a claim the court rejected. This contradiction left Garcia in legal limbo, protected by one arm of the government, targeted by another. He lived under constant threat, his family's future hanging in the balance. His story exposes the contradictions and complexities of the U.S. immigration system. It set the stage for a shocking era that would propel his case to the Supreme Court. In March 2025, Garcia's life was upended in a matter of hours when ICE agents arrived at his home before dawn. He was taken into custody with little explanation, his family left in shock and confusion. Garcia, a longtime resident with deep ties to his community, had always believed he was protected by the law. But that morning, everything changed. Despite a court order explicitly protecting him from removal, Garcia was processed for deportation. The legal documents that should have shielded him were ignored, lost in a bureaucratic shuffle that would have devastating consequences. Instead of being released or sent home, Garcia was flown to El Salvador and delivered directly to the gates of SCOTUS prison, a facility infamous for its harsh conditions and overcrowding. There, he was placed among alleged gang members, many of whom had never met him before. Days later, the U.S. government made a rare and damning admission. Garcia's deportation was the result of an administrative error. Officials acknowledged that the court order had been overlooked, a mistake with life-altering consequences. Garcia's case was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader aggressive removal program, in which the U.S. paid El Salvador to detain deportees, often with little regard for individual circumstances or legal protections. Deportation flights continued, and families were torn apart. For Garcia's family, the pain was immediate and profound. They watched helplessly as his rights were swept aside by the machinery of enforcement. Their home felt emptier, their future uncertain, as they struggled to understand how this could happen. The government's admission of error could not undo the harm. Garcia remained trapped in a foreign prison, far from his loved ones and beyond the reach of U.S. custody. The damage was done, and the path to justice was unclear. In the aftermath, a frantic legal scramble began. Lawyers worked around the clock, filing urgent appeals and gathering evidence to bring Garcia back. Each day that passed made the task more difficult, as international barriers and bureaucratic delays mounted. Garcia's ordeal raised a chilling question for the nation. When the government makes a mistake of this magnitude, can it ever truly be fixed? Or are some consequences once set in motion nearly impossible to reverse? Garcia's legal team raced to federal court where Judge Paula Sinis ordered the government to return him and provide daily updates. The administration resisted, claiming it couldn't force El Salvador to release him. Judge Sinis pressed for answers, refusing to accept bureaucratic excuses for a blatant violation of rights. The case escalated to the Fourth Circuit, which unanimously upheld the order, declaring the government had a duty to correct its error. These rulings were victories for Garcia's family but also set up a constitutional showdown. With options dwindling, the government appealed to the Supreme Court. The case was no longer just about one man. It was a test of the judiciary's power to enforce its orders against executive resistance. The stakes had never been higher. In April 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous decision, ordering the administration to facilitate Garcia's return. The ruling was met with intense anticipation, as the nation had been closely following the case for months. Legal experts, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike waited anxiously for the court's verdict, knowing it would set a precedent for how the government handles its own errors in matters of deportation and international law. The ruling affirmed the government's responsibility to address its mistake, but also acknowledged the complexities of international diplomacy. The justices recognized that while the government must act to correct its wrongful actions, it faces significant obstacles when dealing with foreign governments and international agreements. The decision highlighted the delicate balance between upholding justice for individuals and maintaining stable diplomatic relations. The court required the government to show real efforts to secure Garcia's release, refusing to let the issue be quietly dismissed. This meant that the administration could not simply issue statements or make symbolic gestures. It had to demonstrate concrete actions and ongoing negotiations. The court's insistence on transparency and accountability sent a clear message that the judiciary would not tolerate half measures or bureaucratic delays. Both sides claimed partial victory. The administration cited deference to executive power, emphasizing that the court had not overstepped its constitutional boundaries. Meanwhile, Garcia's family celebrated the court's insistence on action, feeling vindicated after months of uncertainty and fear. Supporters outside the courthouse cheered, holding signs and giving interviews, while legal analysts debated the broader implications of the decision for future cases. The liberal justices issued a warning: if the government could deport someone and then claim powerlessness, it would create a dangerous loophole. They cautioned that such a precedent could undermine the very foundation of constitutional protections, allowing the executive branch to evade judicial scrutiny simply by acting first and asking questions later. Their words resonated with advocates for civil liberties, who saw the warning as a crucial safeguard against government overreach. Their statement underscored the profound constitutional stakes. Judicial review must not be rendered meaningless. The justices emphasized that the courts play a vital role in checking government power, especially when individual rights are at risk. By reaffirming the importance of judicial oversight, the court sought to preserve the integrity of the legal system and ensure that no one, not even the government, is above the law. The decision was a powerful affirmation of the rule of law, but it left practical challenges unresolved. While the court's order was clear, the path forward remained uncertain. Would the administration be able to negotiate Garcia's return? How would foreign governments respond? These unanswered questions loomed large, leaving both supporters and critics of the decision searching for clarity in the days ahead. The nation watched, waiting to see if justice would be done. Across the country, people gathered around televisions and followed updates online, hoping that the government would fulfill its obligations and that Garcia's story would end with a long-awaited homecoming. The Supreme Court had spoken, but the next chapter was yet to be written. The Supreme Court's order collided with international politics as El Salvador's President Bukele publicly refused to release Garcia, calling him a terrorist. This defiance, echoed by the Trump administration, created a united front against the judiciary's order. The administration argued its hands were tied, using Bukele's refusal as justification. Garcia remained imprisoned, caught in a geopolitical standoff. President Trump's earlier pledge to respect the Supreme Court now stood in stark contrast to his administration's actions. Critics accused the administration of slow-walking compliance, exposing the limits of judicial power. The Supreme Court can issue orders but relies on the executive to enforce them. When the executive resists, the system of checks and balances is put to the test. The world waited to see if the U.S. would uphold its own rule of law. Garcia's case pushed the U.S. government to a constitutional crossroads, testing the separation of powers. The judiciary asserted its authority to remedy a legal wrong, while the executive claimed exclusive power over foreign affairs. If the administration's stance prevails, it could create a sphere of executive action immune from judicial review. Legal experts warned of a looming constitutional crisis if the executive openly defies the Supreme Court. The courts have no enforcement power of their own. Their authority depends on respect and compliance. Non-compliance could erode public trust and trigger unprecedented political fallout. The outcome will define the balance between presidential power and judicial authority for years to come. Beneath the legal drama is a family torn apart by a bureaucratic error. Garcia's wife, Jennifer, became a tireless advocate, fighting for her husband's return while caring for their young son. Their child, traumatized by witnessing his father's arrest, now grows up without him. The family's pain is a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of immigration enforcement. Garcia's imprisonment in Seco, a place he fled to escape, haunts his family daily. The U.S. judicial system recognized the danger, yet the executive branch delivered him into it. Their story is not unique. It echoes the struggles of countless families separated by deportation. At the heart of every immigration case is a human being whose life hangs in the balance. The Supreme Court's unanimous verdict is a call to action, not a conclusion. This case exposes the fragility of our democratic institutions and the tension between government power and individual liberty. Our system of checks and balances requires vigilance and participation from all citizens. The fate of Garcia shows that when rights are eroded for one, they are threatened for all. We must demand transparency, support judicial independence, and hold leaders accountable. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It demands engagement and courage. The future of American justice depends on our collective will to defend the principles that define us.